Vedaham samatitani vartamanani acharjuna pravishyame chabutani mamte veda nakaschana. For Arjuna, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all that is yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. I'll just read the last part of the first part of the purport that we read last week so we can catch up. And then we'll assign someone to read. Here is the question of the personality and impersonality clearly stated. If Krishna is the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where Maya, material, is the impersonal, consider him to be then like the living entity would change. He would change his body and forget everything about his past life. Anyone with a material body cannot remember his past life, nor can he foretell his future life, nor can he predict the outcome of his present life. Therefore, he cannot know what is happening in past, present, and future. Unless one is liberated from the material contamination, one cannot know past, present, and future. So we can call on our readers. I guess we usually have a Smita, if that's okay. Smita, thank you for the gift from you and your mother.
Hare Krishna Raj. Thank you. I'm so glad you liked it. Unlike the ordinary human being, Lord Krishna clearly says that he completely knows what happened in the past, what is happening in the present, and what will happen in the future. In the 4th chapter, we have seen that Lord Krishna remembers instructing Vivaswan, the sun god, millions of years ago. Krishna knows every living entity because he is situated in every living being's heart as the supersoul. But despite his presence in every living entity as supersoul and his presence as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the less intelligent, even if able to realize the impersonal Brahman, cannot realize Sri Krishna as the Supreme Person. Certainly, the transcendental body of Sri Krishna is not perishable. He is just like the sun, and Maya is like a cloud. In the material worlds, we can see that there is the sun and that there are clouds and different stars and planets. The clouds may cover all these in the sky temporarily, but this covering is only apparent to our limited vision. The sun, moon, and stars are not actually covered. Similarly, Maya cannot cover the Supreme Lord. By his internal potency, he is not manifest to the less intelligent class of men. As it is stated in the 3rd verse of this chapter, out of millions and millions of men, some try to become perfect in this human form of life, and out of thousands and thousands of such perfected men, hardly one can understand what Lord Krishna is. Even if one is perfected by realization of impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma, he cannot possibly understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, without being in Krishna consciousness.
Did we read that last week? I can't remember. Seems like we did that.
Mm-hmm.
Some reflections from anyone? Some thoughts?
I think we did read it last time because I have it highlighted here and I have a little note.
Yeah, I was thinking when it came without being, especially at the end, where it says, he cannot possibly understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, without being in Krishna consciousness. And we were discussing knows and understand.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We'll do number 27. Oh, I wonder if it had 2 pages in one. So. Okay, so text 97, Icha Dvesa Samutena Vandla Mohena Bharata Sarvabhutani Samohan Sage Yati Parantapa. O sign of Bharata, a conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, risen from desire and hate. Do we have a reader? Someone want to read? We got school teachers. We Rajabhumi, are you ready? Or are you grading papers?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. Just the real constitutional position of the living entity is that the subordination of the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from his pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by the delusion, the illusory energy, and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. Due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees who are not deluded or contaminated by desire and hate can understand that Lord Shri Krishna appears by his internal potencies. But those who are deluded by duality and inner science think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is created by material energies. This is the misfortune. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, etc., thinking, this is my wife, this is my house, I am the master of this house, I am the husband of this wife. These are the dualities of delusions. Those who are deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
This should bring out some conversation. Anybody have some reflections? We can get every. It's nice to see
As I was reading, I see the yin and the yang of everything.
Yeah.
Is that a specific reason why Prabhupada did that?
Well, he's just giving examples. You know, he's giving so many examples of the symptoms of someone who is deluded by the material energy. And they're deluded, bewildered by delusion arising from desire and hate. In other words, wanting something or not wanting something. Kalpa, what is it? Some kalpa, vikalpa. Did I get it right? Sometimes I get it backwards. These hankering and the mental desiring or not wanting something. So one of the symptoms of it is that of a person who is deluded like by the material energy is that they'll think that in everything in duality, because in one sense, living entity doesn't experience any of this on a spiritual level. In the material level, when we're in material consciousness, as Prabhupada says here, it dwells in duality of honor, dishonor, misery, happiness, woman, man, good, bad, pleasure, pain. It's like in the second chapter, he describes that that these what would you say? What's that verse? Matras prasas to kunte asitas na sukaduka. That all these temporary things are due to being experienced by the senses. So we'll experience the summer and winter, the heat and cold, all these different things. And our mental doors tolerate them because we have to understand that we're part and parcel of Krishna inside this body. And that is separate and distinct. That's the most important, that soul is actually separate and distinct from this body. The soul is not experiencing happiness and distress. The soul is actually experiencing, it's always in a happy state. Because of false ego, because it's being covered by false ego, we now think that we are happy or we're distressed or honored or dishonored or we're miserable or we're happy. I'm a man or I'm a woman, I'm a dog, I'm a cat. I would say he does. Papa sometimes goes through, numerous different examples. And so Prabhupada explains here, these are delusion, these are dualities of delusion. In the absolute world, we don't have them. This world is dual. We have to experience good to know what bad is. We have to experience bad to know what we have to experience heat to understand cold. But in the spiritual sense, everything is transcendental, and those things they're almost like time, which things it's not, the time is conspicuous by its absence in the spiritual world. It's not that there's no motion. It's just that there's everything is, what would you say, in the present, as we were discussing 2 weeks ago. Some thoughts from our esteemed group. And Annette.
Well, this may be a very dumb question, and I'm sure I know the answer. So why do all living entities have to be born into delusion? And are the demigods born into delusion too?
Yeah, they think they're demigods. I think I'm Indra. Indra sometimes becomes jealous, and he thinks my pulse is going to be taken. There'll be some yogi sitting down doing meditation and really getting control of the senses. And so Indra will think, oh my goodness, my spot's going to be taken. I better send a damsel down to distract this guy, because otherwise I'm going to lose my position as the king of heaven. And so it's described from the topmost living entity, say Brahma, or sometimes they use Indra. Some Indra is the king of the heavenly planets, but Brahma is the topmost living entity. Down to the most insignificant ant or Indra, Gopa, the germs, all of them are born into the delusion of identifying with that particular body that they have. You know, and some living entities can't go beyond the thought of I must eat. I must eat. You know, what is it called? Anima? Somebody help me with the word. Those different stages, and it ends up with an anandamaya-abhyasa. You know, the first phase is just, you know, they just eat, and that's all they can think, eat. You know, and it progressively goes up according to their what would you probably use the word today, evolutionary progress. You know, so in other words, we progress through the evolutionary stage from Brahma, and then we go down to whatever living entity, and we fluctuate through those different species of life. Some places Prabhupada says we've experienced all the different species of life. I don't know if we've experienced every member of every species of life, but we've experienced every species of life, I guess, like birds and bees and reptiles and fish and mammals and whatever. So whatever we're born in, we think it's a delusion. You know, we're born into the delusion. That's why we always say that prayer in the beginning. Om Gyantam Vedanta I'm born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master is opening my heart with a torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, we offer our most humble and respectful obeisances at his lotus feet, because we were born in ignorance. We're born in not understanding who we are. And through the grace of Guru and through the grace of Krishna and the grace of the teachings of Krishna, we're allowed to understand our constitutional position. Yeah, even the demigods, even Brahma. Brahma was so bewildered one time. He went to Dwarka, and he wanted to see Krishna. So there was somebody at the door. So what do you call it, a watchman? So he goes to the door and he says, "This is in Krishna book." And he goes to the door and he says, "I'd like to see Krishna." And he says, "Who should I say is calling?" He says, "Lord Brahma." So the person goes in and tells Krishna, "Lord Brahma has come to see you." He says, "Which Brahma?" And he goes back to the door and he asks Brahma, "Which Brahma?" He goes, "Brahma, I'm the forehead of Brahma. I'm the creator of this universe." And so he goes back, and then Krishna manifests all kinds of Brahma. Our Brahma only has 4 heads. This is just like a simple management universe. Some planets, there's like 1,000-headed Brahmas. And then all of a sudden, when Krishna called all the Brahmas to his residence, and Brahma, the 4-headed Brahma, got to see like Brahmas with 100 heads, 1,000 heads, 10,000 heads. I think it even says 1,000,000 heads. I don't know how far. how far that has to go. But, and then Brahma was just like, oh, wait, there's something more than me. There's something, I'm just a small Brahma. I'm not the big gun. I'm not the big personality I thought I was. So yeah, we're born into delusion. I'm a demigod. Look at Nala Kuvera and Mani Griva. They're the sons of Kuvera, right? The sons of Kuvera. And they're demigods, but they became intoxicated and they were taking, what is that? What's the beverage in the spiritual world that it's not Varuni, it's the one that
Somaras.
Somaras. It's a type of intoxicant that actually gives strength. It actually, gives a lot of strength. And so they were enjoying in the water with some, I guess I would use the word damsels again. And Narada Muni walked by, and the ladies immediately covered themselves. It's an embarrassing situation. But Nala Kuvera and Mani Griva were so intoxicated they didn't cover themselves. They were so deluded, even though they're the sons of the treasure of all the demigods. They were so deluded, and so Narada Muni cursed them. You want to stand naked? You take birth as trees. And so immediately they realized, oh my goodness, we're in trouble. Can we make some kind of positive, aspect to this curse? He said, okay, you'll take birth as twin Arjuna trees, and you'll live for like 5,000 years or whatever it was in the courtyard of Nanda. And when Krishna appears, he'll release you. Yeah. And then we have the Damodar Leela where Krishna, gets mad at his mother for not, nursing him, and he breaks the yogurt pot, and then she ties him to a grinding mortar. Back then you could do those kind of things. Now you got child protective services. So anyway, she binds him to a grinding mortar, and he pulls the grinding mortar through the two trees and knocks down the two trees, and the two sons of the demigods manifest. And they realize, oh my goodness, we were so deluded. We were so deluded. So it's actually a good question, because each and every one of us are deluded. We're just really, and to get rid of that delusion, to free ourselves from that. I don't want to say it's impossible. I just want to say it's going to take a Guru Kripa and Krishna Kripa. Kripa means the mercy. It's going to take the mercy of Guru and Krishna to really allow us to really just say deteriorate that, or to evolve from this false conception that we have of ourselves. So deeply rooted with this misconception.
So, Maharaj,
go ahead.
It just goes back to probably another question I asked, because I've been stewing with this about, this is just the higher design, right? This is how Krishna set it all up. We were supposed to be deluded. We're supposed to come into this world this way so that we would crawl back to Krishna. This is, it was all set up this way, right?
It was a setup. It's not my fault, Your Honor. It was a setup. A few weeks ago on my WhatsApp message, I said that explaining, I'm kind of getting into, every once in a while I'll jump into Japa books, and I'll jump back into the Bhagavatam from my WhatsApp. It's totally unpredictable. So now I'm on Satchidananda Maharaj's book, but when I was on the third canto, Prabhupada was explaining that the material energy has two purposes. One, to let us in delusion think that we can enjoy separately from God. But we can, it can't happen, but we're so bewildered, we're so much just utilizing the word delusional, that we think we can enjoy in this world. And the other purpose of the material world is to teach us that we can't, and that we can utilize this material energy in the service of Krishna, and I guess we'll lack or emancipate ourselves or relieve ourselves of this material existence and get back to the spiritual world. You know, we're just like we can, and it is a setup. It is a setup because Krishna knows that we can't be happy without him, and so yeah, he figures it out. That okay, let him. I gave the example a million times. I built that little tent in the backyard, trying to leave my parents when I was like 6 years old or something like that. You know, within a few hours I was hungry. I was going back into the refrigerator. So you know, we come to the material world and we make our little house. We have what is Prabhupada says here. We get our honor or dishonor. We identify as a man, as a woman. We identify something as good or something as bad, pleasure and pain. And thinking that this is my wife, this is my house, I am the master of the house, I am the husband of this wife. When actually we're my Jiva, Loka Jiva, we're all eternal parts and parcels of Krishna, and we're meant for Krishna's enjoyment. And I mean, you know, and when we perform or act or behave, whatever word we want to use here, in a way to serve and please Krishna, then we become happy because we're part and parcel of Krishna. We can't become happy without Krishna being, you know, situated within our lives. It just doesn't work.
Thank you.
Thank you. They were good questions. There's what's that old saying? There's only foolish question. The only bad question is the one that's not asked. Something else from anyone in the esteemed group?
Bharat Pushpanjali has.
Oh, I didn't see. I was right here. For some reason, she's up in the far corner of my thing, and I didn't see the yellow. Pushpanjali.
Krishna Bharat. Bharat, the question is there a difference between material desire and hate and spiritual desire and hate? And then if we get, sometimes we might like at least get a sense. Am I audible because I'm wearing headphones? Is it audible?
Anybody else getting an echo, or is it just me?
It's because of the.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is there a difference between material desire and hate and spiritual desire and hate? And if we know, okay, oh, I was just under the influence of desire and hate, what can we do to, you know, come out of it? Like temporarily in the day, I mean, at least 20 times we might have different material desires, 20 times we might have some hatredful thoughts towards people. So what should we do at that time? I know to completely come out of it, like you said, it will take a lot of Guru Kripa and, you know, practice, but, you know, short baby steps, what do we do? You know, on
I would say let's begin to identify it. Let's begin. I think the first step is acceptance. We can identify that we're in this duality of what is it? Desire and hate, and we can understand that it's hampering our Krishna. It's hampering our advancement in spiritual life. There is spiritual desire. Spiritual desire is that I want to please Krishna. I don't know about the word hate, but there, you know, hate's I actually might even look it up later on because I'd like to get into that a little bit. But there is anger can be used, just like Prabhupada explains that Hanuman or Arjuna couldn't have fought in the battle of Kurukshetra without utilizing anger or disgust or something like that for the enemy on behalf of Krishna. Because it's on behalf of Krishna, it's spiritualized. Just like Prabhupada was really explaining it step by step in a lecture the other day, how we have to eat. In other words, we have to have a place to live. Have to do so many things. We just do those things for Krishna. You know, if we're going to go to the market anyway, so just think, I'm going to the market to buy something for Krishna so I can cook this nice thing and offer it to Krishna. then the shopping becomes part of our devotion, and our cooking becomes part of our devotion, and even our earning capacity becomes part of our devotion. And in the spiritual, I was just listening to a very nice conversation with His Holiness Shiva Ramars, and I can't remember the lady's name right now. She's a psychiatrist, I do believe. I'm not sure she's a psychologist or psychiatrist.
Radha Mataji.
From UK, yeah. I actually like to get her her email, send her something that might help her in her, with working with devotees. And in this, even in the spiritual world, we experience just like in this world, we have fear, and that fear is based on the illusion of this material body. But there's fear in the spiritual world, because even in the spiritual world, it appears as if the demons are going to come. And so so there's that aspect is there. And so whatever aspect is here is a reflection of what's in the spiritual world. And so Shiva Ramars just touched on that just a little bit, but it was just a little statement within a context of a larger subject. And they said, yeah, everything that's in this world is in the spiritual world. And so I don't, and to hate someone, I mean, I think in the Judeo-Christian system, it's like hate the sin, not the sinner. In other words, be disturbed by the evil. Anybody can become, any person can become overcome by desire at any moment, and that desire may be unfavorable or maybe, what would you say, evil. And so, what causes a person to become evil? That's a reaction to the perverted reflection of what we think ourselves to be, and degrading us further and further down. That misidentification of ourselves. The more we misidentify ourselves, the further down into the I don't know, I guess the abyss of the material existence. Try to use big words here. Into the the well of material existence. And so, yeah, I find it very difficult to hate something. I think I'm going to look that up when I get done with the class today to see. But yeah, it's there. It has to be there in the spiritual world, because otherwise, how can it be here in the material, in a pure sense?
Yes, Father, thank you.
Anything else? I forgot what verse we're on. Did we read the purport?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brother Bunny read the whole purport. Yeah. Should we do 28?
Yes, Maharaj.
Any other questions more, or any other reflections from 27? Before we move to 28, let's make sure we cover it fully. If anybody has anything.
We can move, Maharaj.
Okay. And then Tejwar is determined to finish the book by the end of the century. So 28, Yesham Tvanta Gatam Papam Gyananam Punya Karmanam Te Dandva Moha Nirmukti Vanjate Mam Vita. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are free from the dualities of delusion. They engage themselves in my service with determination. I'd like to read that one more time. This is getting close to the end of the chapter. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are free from the dualities of delusion. Remember that from desire, the delusion, dualities of delusion and desire, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. This is like the result. This is like the result of what happens when we become freed from desire and hate. When we're no longer under the dualities of delusion, we come to the point where we understand that our constitutional position is to serve Krishna. So whose turn is it to read the purport? I don't see everybody's picture up here. Sri Rupa Manjari, are you capable of reading today? Are you grading, or is your voice still?
Yes, I'm okay. Raj. Thank you.
Sure, we're calling our teachers to be taught.
Those eligible for elevation of the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, gradually, they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion.
Some thoughts from everyone? Not there, huh?
My dear Guru Maharaj, I even just before getting to the purport, where he said, in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated. Is that something that can happen in this lifetime? Because I'm kind of like completely eradicated, but
Yes.
everything that we do, every thought, every word, every action, do we completely eradicate in a lifetime?
We do, we can. That's stated many times, places, that in this lifetime, one can come to pure consciousness. As we stated before, of course, we were on that same podcast, or whatever you call that video, watching Shiva Maharaj and that psychiatrist, and she was describing some of Lord Chaitanya's transcendental symptoms, and it's Mahabhav, in other words, losing consciousness and falling on the floor and rolling on the ground, and the joints becoming extended. It's always, that's some pretty, amazing, what would you say, descriptions of the, what would you say, symptoms of spiritual ecstasy. But generally, when in this world, when someone achieves freedom from the bonded conception life, understands their eternal relationship with Krishna, they continue to follow the practices so that they, we don't talk about it. It's among certain group of people, we may mention those things, but in general topics, we don't do them. Sometimes Prabhupada would, every once in a while, Prabhupada would slip. I don't want to say slip, it's hard to say Prabhupada slipped, but every once in a while, Prabhupada would go into trance when he was singing a kirtan, or when he was speaking, or when he was, doing different things. And actually, one time he went into literally a trance, and the devotees just started. They didn't know what to do. He was chanting, and I think Jai Radha Madhava, which is a song we sing before giving the class. And the devotees didn't know what to do, so they just started chanting Hare Krishna. And then Prabhupada came back into external consciousness and said, chant Hare Krishna. And he ended the class. And then later on, one of his close disciples asked him, Prabhupada, this morning, it kind of said, when this happens, what are we supposed to do? And Prabhupada said, just chant Hare Krishna. But it's very rare that someone who is elevated like that shows those symptoms, because there are a class of, I don't even know if you can call them Vaishnavas, they're called Sahajas. And the Sahajas, they pretend to have these symptoms. The symptoms of ecstasy, palpitation of the heart, percolation, which is a fancy word for goosebumps, and faltering of the voice, states of confusion, laughing uncontrollably, crying uncontrollably. There's so many different symptoms, and because they're mentioned in the scriptures, there's a class of people who want cheap adoration, and they I think is the word feign these activities, that they pretend to have these symptoms. So in general, someone who has reached this platform and may be on the verge of experiencing something, what would you say, holds back, so that to not give credit. In other words, they give the credit to their words, to their teachings, to these kind of things, rather than the credit for shedding tears. I've seen these sahajas in India before, and every once in a while you'll see them. They'll pick one out, and he'll be rolling on the ground, and Prabhupada said, if you see this, you stomp on their face with boot. And if they're actually in ecstasy, they won't feel it. It's like this stomp on their head with boot, and if it's real, they won't know that they won't know they got booted. And if it isn't real, they'll want to fight with you or whatever. So it's like that. We can actually achieve it. We have to have that conviction. That's one of the Utsaha Nishchaya Dayat, enthusiasm, conviction, and patience. That conviction that through the process that we will gain all that's stated in the scripture. And that once we achieve that state, it's described that there's three classes of devotees. Kanishta Adhikaris are the beginners, and they basically see God only in the temple or the church, in the worship. That's what they see. That they don't see the Lord within the heart of other devotees serving. And but the Madhyama Adhikari sees everyone. He sees those who are evil as evil, and he doesn't approach them. But the ones who are innocent, he approaches. And then there's Uttama Adhikari, who sees that everyone is engaged in the devotional service. He just cannot see anyone outside of the engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. And so these Uttama Adhikaris sometimes come down to the platform of Madhyama Adhikari to make distinctions, so that they can spread the message, the goodwill, the good message of the process of Krishna consciousness. Oh yeah, Anamaya. Thank you, Pushpanjali. Anamaya. The first stage of Anamaya, just eating. I just found it in the notes. So yes, and hopefully, hopefully some of us get there. I mean, we'll all get there. It's just when. It's just when. Any other questions? Yes, Ananteshwar.
Maharaj, I like how Prabhupada started the purport. Prabhupada says those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it's very difficult to transcend to duality of desire and hate. So Prabhupada doesn't say it's not possible.
Yeah.
So there is some hope.
Yeah. Those eligible for elevation
Yeah.
are mentioned in this verse. And it's like the persons who have acted piously in previous, in other words, who have done some service in the previous life, or even pious activities, things in the mode of goodness will give us birth in the mode of goodness and give us an opportunity. Of course, we still have to take birth, which we have to go through many challenges, no matter what kind of body we get. Who asked about Nanette asked about the demigods, identifying with themselves as demigods, I mean, it's a misidentification, even if you identify yourself as a demigod. And so, yeah, there is hope against hope. Even the Nectar of Instruction, which is one of our books, he says that the devotee should have hope against hope. Even though there's no hope, we should have hope. Because it seems like an impossible situation, but the situation becomes possible or plausible. Especially here, it was mentioned, this elevation is possible by in Krishna consciousness, in the association of pure devotees, for the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. One can be, it's a hopeful thing. That's why we always emphasize, try to stay in good association. Association will determine so much about us. And we have Srila Prabhupada's association readily available on every page of every book, every lecture that he gave. And I can't think of there is no better association, practically speaking, available at this point than to have that. I mean, every day I want to listen to that, the lecture, and every time Prabhupada says fool or rascal or mudha, and I literally start laughing because he just he won't give up. And he's just so determined to just get it through everybody's head. And every day, I've started somehow or another, I don't know, it's on my phone, I don't know how it works, but it started with the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and now we're up to the fourth chapter around verse 19 or something, 15 maybe. I'm probably just going systematically through each and every one. And literally every class, he has to bring up, you must know you're not this body. Let's just really understand that this is the essential thing, that we're not this material body. We're eternal servants of Krishna. Let's begin to act like it. Let's begin to act. Some other thoughts from the esteemed group? Okay, can we get one? Oh, yeah, sure.
Manjali Mataji has a question. Go ahead, Mataji.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
I don't see anybody with their hand up.
Shirupa.
So, Marge, I have a question. The next sentence says, only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That seems like a real heavy criteria.
Yeah.
To engage in, or to be able to accept devotional service. So, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering then if that seems like, I mean, in the just right before that we
Prerequisite, right? Prerequisite.
and then it seems like it's like, oh my goodness, like, am I in devotional service, or am I even doing devotional service? I don't know.
So open your Bhagavad Gita to 1866, and I'll read the second paragraph. This is a famous verse. Sarvadharma Prayakyagya Mamekam Saranam Braja. It's a famous verse. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions. Don't worry. So Prabhupada brings this point up of the 7th chapter, verse 28, in the second paragraph. In the 7th chapter, it was said that only one who has become free from all sinful reactions can take to the worship of Lord Krishna. Thus, one may think that unless he is free from all sinful reactions, he cannot take to the surrendering process. To such doubts, it is here said that even if one is not free from all sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Sri Krishna, he is automatically freed. There is no need of strenuous effort to free oneself from sinful reactions. One should unhesitedly accept Krishna as the supreme savior of all living entities. With faith and love, one should surrender unto him. So, see this, it's a little bit in my mind. I won't give you all my mind. I'll just give you one little point. In my mind, it's like Prabhupada is saying here: no need for strenuous efforts to free oneself from sinful reactions, because there's a section of the scriptures which are karma kanda, where you have to do a pious thing to undo an impious thing, and you're always trying to undo. You're always trying to atone, or is what we call perform priyascha, performing these activities to undo all the things that we've done. But simply by the act of even attempting to surrender to Krishna frees one from this situation. I was asked by I gave class one night in one day in Gainesville, and somebody challenged me. Well, it says in the 28th verse, 28th verse, 7th chapter, and then I just read them off the verse 66, and quite satisfied. It was a little bit of a challenging question. Like I know something that you don't know, and I'm going to get you on this one, but somehow or another, Prabhupada's purports are always, if we read and study Prabhupada's books, we'll always, Krishna will always open up the answers. But it's very clear, isn't it? Sri Rupa Manjari, it's just very clear. The seventh chapter says this, but if you just surrender to me, and don't worry, because the word that it says, I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. Sarva means all, and papa means sinful. Aham, tvam means, I think tvam means I. What is it? Let me just get, aham, I, you. Tvam, aham, I, tvam, you. Sarva, all sinful reactions. Krishna will take care of that. Krishna mokshayaj yami will deliver. And then he says, Mahasucha, don't worry. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen. As Brajabhumi was stating earlier, can we actually make it? Yeah, we can make it. It's not a problem. And so, yeah, Krishna gives it in that last verse. Well, it's not the last, it's verse 66. He quotes that 7th chapter to just like let us know that, okay, Krishna is very kind. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, somebody else from the last 4 minutes? We did read the whole purport. Right?
Pushpanjali had a question. Maharaj.
Okay, push. Okay,
It got answered, Maharaj. Thank you.
okay, okay.
We didn't finish the purport, Maharaj. Do you want to finish?
Yeah, do we have time to finish it in 3 minutes?
We can at least read.
We can what?
We can read.
Okay, who's our next volunteer? Nanette is usually the final reader of the evening, if that's okay, Nanette?
Gosh. Sure. Let's see. Wait, I've just lost my place now.
It is stated, the second paragraph of 628.
Okay. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination.
Very good. There's one point, I think it's in Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Srila Prabhupada explains that, I think that's where it's at, that the great souls, they come into this world with the purpose of reclaiming those who are now ready. They may be on different levels of being ready, but those who are on that path, like the great souls, will come through this world, and their purpose is to gather up those individual souls who are ready in this lifetime to do those things which are necessary for us to do to free ourselves. Of course, Prabhupada again takes advantage. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of the Lord's law. In other words, like, because ultimately the impersonalists, they claim to be God. They think that that individual Brahman effulgence, that oneness with God, that we all become one. Homogeneous, is that the right word? Homogeneous, we're all one God at one point. We've just strayed off a little bit. And once we realize that we're God, then we go back and probably always condemns it. Always the greatest violation of the God's laws. Very nice. Now it's 8:30. We have time for comment, or should we do comment next week? Or what should we do now? 9 days for?
We can take.
If any reflections from anyone for this last paragraph? Some nice verses tonight, I think. I think it was very nice, wasn't
Yeah, we can leave it for next week because it might take more than a few minutes.
it?
If I ask this,
Okay, so mark it down on your book, on the good book, and we will take up next Tuesday, Krishna willing. We'll get to see everyone again. So thank you very much for your kind attention and questions.